All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning into the Realennials. I'm Pat.
I'm Ruby.
And we're here with
Jay.
Thanks, Jay, for joining us today.
Man, thanks for
Jay's
having me.
another young Kansas Cityan entrepreneur here to grace us with his knowledge and his presence.
I won't be young forever.
Well,
Neither
right now
will
you
we,
are.
But in the present, you are young.
Yes. What's up? What's going
So
on?
what's up? Tell us about yourself. Where are you from?
Man, I have a cat named Morris. I don't know if we can see this. Am I messing up the...
That's
Morris
a personalized mug.
Can we cuss on this, by the way?
You
Try not
Preferably
to.
not.
That's a lot of editing for roosters.
She
Oh,
edits
okay,
the radio
okay.
version of the show.
That is
So
okay.
So you're going by
if it's
Rooster now, huh?
imperative to get your point across, feel free. I
Yeah.
mean, it's only a little bit more editing.
Okay.
But,
I'll try not to. I try not to cuss before noon.
okay. Okay.
You
Yeah.
looked at me like. I also
I mean, if we're
try
going to
not
talk
to.
about the Northeast, it's going to be hard not to cuss.
So, you grew up in the
understand that.
Northeast, right?
Yeah, so like Independence area. Yeah, and then every bike ride led into the Northeast and a little bit further east, like Sugar Creek and all that. There used to be Piggly Wiggly there that we used to take snacks from, and it's not in business anymore. I don't know if we had anything to do with that.
Dang, you put a business out? Okay.
You
Won't
heard
be
it
the
here
last
first.
one,
No, I'm just kidding.
but it'll be the last one that I do it that way.
Dang. What was that like growing up over there? I don't know very many people, honestly, from that part of town. I mean, I know I live in KACK, so I'm meeting people there. I've always known people from KU that are from like Overland Park and Johnson County in general. And yeah, so I don't know a lot of people from the east side, to be honest.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's a really beautiful neighborhood, like especially the Northeast, where like there's a lot of culture. There's a lot of culture, a lot of beautiful houses. This is where like the old mobsters used to live, and like people in the mafia and people in the democratic political machine way back in the day, like in Prohibition used to live. And so they have all these big stone houses further in there. But if you go down like 24 Highway right now, you'll see a lot of homeless people. You'll see a lot of, there's a lot of drugs, but the people are so beautiful. And there's some really good Mexican food over there.
Oh, there is.
Ooh, I have yet to explore that part of town.
We got to go to this place called Torito.
Torito?
Yeah,
El
little
Burrito.
bowl.
Yeah.
Where's
They
that
don't even
at?
speak English, man. They go, it's
My type of place.
it's like, let's see, I can't think of the cross street, but it's right on 24 Highway there the other day, and I get to use my Spanish out there, and it's real choppy, and they get mad at me, but I love it.
And they give you the wrong order. And
How good is your Spanish? My Spanish is muy mal.
Mine is okay. I can get around. You know, I just got back from Spain,
what?
okay.
Really?
like 3 days ago.
No way. Tell us
What? I
about
didn't know you
that.
were in
No,
Spain.
listen, that Spanish is different, though.
Oh,
Yeah.
super different.
Like they have like a lisp. I don't like it.
They have 4 languages in Spain,
Yeah.
like
Spanish,
official
Castellano,
Catalan,
Catalan. Oh yeah.
and then Basque,
Yeah,
Oh, I did not
which
realize that.
like nobody knows where Basque language came from.
at all.
It doesn't have a Latin background. It doesn't have whatever French or whatever. Like it's a totally different language.
I did not know
They have
this.
no idea where it came
How
from.
long were you there? Did you have a good time?
I did, yeah. I was there for 12 days. So
What?
I was there for 10
I
for
haven't seen
business.
you for 12 days.
I know. Like I feel like less of a person right now, but no, I was there for business for 10 days, working on my first business, and then the storms hit on Saturday and Sunday.
Oh, and you couldn't get back.
Yeah, I saw that coming, and I'm like, all right. So my connecting flight is through Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
An alternate route is through Philadelphia. Do I get stuck in Chicago or Philadelphia or Madrid?
Yeah.
And I'm
Right.
like, boy, I'm staying in Madrid for 2 more days.
Easy.
Easy,
Yeah,
yes.
easy.
So I stayed there Saturday and Sunday, just explored the city, because whenever I go to these new places, whether it's domestic or overseas,
Yeah.
I usually try to find some of the tougher neighborhoods, and even if they're not tough, like go into normal people neighborhoods off the beaten path. And I'll
check
just
it
get
out.
drunk in the morning, and I'll just like
man.
go roam and meet the people and try to communicate and figure it out. And then I find my way back without using my phone or a map
Nice.
or anything.
That's
So-
a
yeah.
must-have.
So you go into a tough neighborhood? Do you like beat somebody up? Like, prove
Yeah,
your
just like I
dominance?
I beat people up in so many different countries. It's great.
Just
No.
to prove your
I try to,
dominance?
I just try to like figure out how they live, you know,
Go
Yeah.
see it for yourself.
and eat the
firsthand.
food.
And eat.
What's
the
something
food.
that you picked up doing that? That you feel like you wouldn't have otherwise picked up?
Oh, let me sip some. My Morris cat.
Morris mug.
I mean, I'll tell you, like, I've been fortunate enough to be to so many different countries and in so many different neighborhoods. And, you know, when we were growing up in Independence, Northeast, like, it didn't seem bad, you know, as a kid. You didn't know anything different until you got out.
Yeah.
And then once you get out, the hood looks worse in a way, right? You're like, oh man, I grew up in this, I grew up in that. Then you go over to these other countries where these people don't have anything,
Yeah.
you know, and they're not getting out. And then you're like, wow, like at least me, I was like, man, okay, so I really got nothing to complain about. Plus I got an immigrant mom who came from a third world country, right? So it's like, oh, I really don't have anything to complain about. Like my life's pretty good. We still got our struggles and everything, but I don't think I would have gotten that if I didn't go and explore the other real neighborhoods. Like I try to stay out of tourist traps as much as I can when I travel and just be with the normal people. Yeah. But I just love pounding the pavement out there and looking at these houses and eating in the restaurants, and they know I'm not from there.
Yeah.
You know, but I show respect. You know, it's the same thing. You know, we don't want people shitting on our block or stuff on our blocks. and we can't disrespect their territory either. So they see that and they recognize that, and they usually take pretty good care of me.
That's interesting because I feel like we're in a weird point in human history where despite all the advantages we have in technology and the comfort levels we live in being modern day America, I feel like a little bit robbed of those experiences of like traveling to new places in the world and them not having been Americanized or like all this globalization that's happened where like society is just basically everywhere is blending together. And so all those places that historically throughout, you know, since the Industrial Revolution when people were traveling the world and going to Buenos Aires and Spain and getting all these new experiences, you know, we see them every day on Instagram and stuff like that. And it's like they've created all these tourist traps that you're talking about. So even when you go to those places, unless you do what you're doing where you're specifically avoiding that, you're just getting this watered down version of what it was. It's like this idea of, you know, in your mind from the historical, the things that you read and stuff like that. But is it the same? And I wonder if that same feeling that they experienced back in the day is attainable.
Without technology? Well, a lot of people aren't on social media, so I think so. It could be a little bit of attainable. But that is interesting because Instagram, I think it's Instagram, the National Park System just asked people to stop tagging themselves in like all of these places that that vloggers will go and like take videos of themselves or pictures of themselves because they are turning into tourist traps because you can geotag where you're at. So we are seeing repercussions of technology with travel and with, you know, kind of the sharing and the social media.
I saw an article the other day of like the top 10 overrated tourist places, and a lot of them were just those places in your mind that you want to go to, like go see the Mona Lisa. And they said, don't go. It's a tourist trap. You're standing behind 200 people. Everyone's taking pictures.
Unless you're Beyonce and Jay-Z and you can just run out.
Yeah. Or one notable one that kind of broke my heart a little bit is because the place that I've always wanted to go is the place in Thailand where the beach was filmed with Leonardo DiCaprio. And they show up like what it's like expectations versus reality pictures, and it's just like tons of people, tons of boats. The water's like kind of polluted from all the tourist boats and stuff like that. The ecosystem's dying there from it.
Sad.
And it's like everything that I dreamt about as a young person wanting to travel the world is like being tainted. It feels like obviously there's ways to design experiences that are more authentic and avoiding those types of things, but
you're doing that.
Yeah, but what does authentic even mean, right? Like in Spain, they have these amazing stories of like fending off the different people who wanted to conquer Spain, and their comic books weren't about, you know, Captain America and these sorts of figures. They were about the natives who were there.
Yeah.
But they're all written in Spanish, which was a language that those native people didn't even speak. It's like, you know, they're like all these different, like how far back do we have to go to get authentic?
interesting point. Yeah.
Probably pretty far back.
Like a million and a half years ago?
At least what I'm referring to is just past the point of where tourist traps became a thing, particularly towards Americans, where people there try to get your attention the minute you get off the plane and create this like experience for you because they want your money and things like that.
For sure.
As opposed to arriving, going to like a little cottage or a villa or whatever, and you know, having a little
For sure.
grandma make you breakfast or something like
Yeah,
that.
no,
Ooh,
that's
abuelas.
true. That's true. Well, abuelitas.
Yeah, abuelitas.
We need to be sitting on the ground. Like, so one of the interesting things that's happening right now is the rise of middle class in third world countries. And so that's giving them a lot more access to travel. So you have these countries that have billions of people in them, and they're going to be traveling to these sorts of places. So it's not even going to be about, you know, what happens when Americans and Western Europeans travel. It's going to be what happens when more and more Indians travel and more and more Chinese
Nigerians.
travel. Because it is different. It is different. That's, you know, and so it'll be interesting to see how the marketplaces start evolving because of that.
To accommodate.
Yeah, and not to mention like the footprint that is left, the environmental impact, you know, of all these planes being in the sky and more people traveling.
Yeah.
You know, right now I think the world's population is 4.5 billion, like in the 1400s,
Ooh, I think
1500s.
it's closer to 7 billion.
Really?
Yeah,
I mean, we're
global
gonna hit.
population?
Yeah, they're saying like by 2020 it's gonna be like 9.5
It's a lot of peoples.
Homo
crazy that
sapiens
exponential
walking
growth
around.
that's
What the hell are we gonna
happening.
do?
There's a lot of, throughout history, there had been points where historically where academics and agricultural specialists had said, oh, at 2 billion people, we're going to run out of the capacity to grow enough food. But they discounted the technological innovations in agriculture that allowed to grow more crops in a square foot, for example. So it's scary to think about how quickly the population is growing, because I'm worried about it growing faster than innovation, but innovation is happening at such a high rate too, so I'm not super duper worried about it.
Yeah.
But it's kind of that like, okay, you got to keep an eye on it type of thing. But you're right, the growth of the middle class all over the world is changing everything. I mean, I think it's changing agriculture. There's so many agricultural and technological innovations that are taking place in India and Africa that are allowing for that kind of population to grow. Mm-hmm. It's intense.
So I don't know. Do you still want to be talking about this? Because I can go off on a tangent of like, why are there so many chickens and cows in the world?
Oh, interesting.
There's the top 2 most populous species like that walk on land.
Is that are you asking that question, or are you going to answer
No.
it for us? Because
Oh, I
I
don't
kind of
even
want to hear what you
It's
think
not even a
about
question. It's a fact.
Right.
It's like, this is crazy, you know, like. Anyways, we could talk about cows and chickens all day, or we could talk about creatives in the Northeast, whatever you guys want to talk about.
that. We have 2 more
No,
segments
we can go on
to talk
about
about all of it.
We can go about that.
2 more segments.
What do you have to say about cows and chickens?
I think they're fun to eat, but like the way that we farm them is just, it's hurting the planet and hurting a lot of things. And I don't know enough about it. I just know that it exists. And I know that like my diet is only changing very slightly because of that.
Yeah.
But that's one of the bigger problems is like, okay, if the world population continues to rise like this, then our output of meat products, and if we continue to consume that, will undeniably hurt the planet.
Yeah, there's people all
100%.
across the board who are dietitians for health reasons, agriculturalists for economic reasons, as well as government policymakers and stuff that are all advocating for eating less meat. I think health-wise, I remember hearing something on NPR that for humans, a healthy intake of like red meat, for example, would be like no more than twice a week.
What?
Yeah, and then so if you take that into account and you lower the amount of meat, then we can grow a diet where people can continue eating meat. But if we continue eating meat at the rate that Americans continue eating meat, and other countries take on that trend, then it's going to be very problematic globally. So that's why I'm like interested. I am interested in talking about this because it's a pretty profound thing that does affect the future, and I don't think enough people know per se, because historically, at least here in America, the conversation about like vegetarianism, for example, has always been like, oh, like I don't want to cuss, but like you. People that eat meat calling people certain names that are vegetarians, and they think that the conversation, at least in my experience, my observation is that those people think that they are of that disposition, they're vegetarians because they care about animals, and the people that talk crap on them don't understand the bigger consequences globally for factory farming animals and things like that. So it is important to talk about those things, because maybe even if you don't care about animals, it's important to realize the consequences of your daily actions, right?
Well, people like have, a meal in front of them, and a lot of times we don't know where that meal came from. We don't know where the vegetables came from, where the meat came from, how it was produced, how it got to our table. And people do need to start thinking about that. I took an environmental conservation class at KU, I think my senior year at KU, and it effed me up. Like, I don't want to cuss, but it really messed me up. I left every day crying because of all of the things that I learned. And I ended up changing my lifestyle after that. Like, I gave up meat for a while. Like, I really started looking into, like, environmental activism. And I think people should be thinking about that. We will talk more about this, and we will get into some other important issues after this break. All right, welcome back, everybody. We're the Realennials. I'm Ruby.
I'm Pat.
And we are joined by Jay today, and we're going to get into what are you doing these days, Jay? What do you have going on?
I work for a company that is building the most intensely connected and collaborative ecosystem of video creators in the world, and then connecting them to the brands who need them.
Awesome. What do you do for them specifically, and what are they called?
I clean toilets, and
He's very proud
people
of it.
leave Post-it notes everywhere on the desk, and so I pick them up. And sometimes Jack will, not to name any names.
That's an ambiguous name.
Well, yeah, some guy named Jack
some
will
guy
leave
named Jack.
his empty bottles on the table, and I pick it up after him. It helps us stay organized and efficient.
That's an important job, actually.
Thank you. Yeah, it's
helping everyone out.
soothing. It's my meditation.
Yeah, I was actually just in the bath. It's funny that you say that. I was in the bathroom and I was like, this toilet needs to be clean. And I was like, I guess that's my job too. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, in the
Yes,
early
I'm
days.
going to do that as well.
In the early
so
days,
it's
for
funny
sure.
that you say that. Just being like, being an entrepreneur is something that like Ruby and I have been working on building over the last year. And we're at this point now where we're putting on these productions and stuff like that. And it's like those little things that I didn't think about. It's like, shit,
Like, we have to do that.
what time is it? Second segment.
Yeah,
It's just like,
go
yeah.
like this. You have something in your mustache.
My mustache.
There you go.
Mustache.
No, there you go.
It's like, okay, I got to do all this thing. I got to set up a website. I got to get contact you. I got to pick up equipment. I got to do all these million different things. And it's like, and I need to clean this toilet. That sucks.
Right, and at the end of the day, you still got to do all the housekeeping stuff.
Yeah, it is the little stuff, though. It is the little stuff, and then especially when things get a little bit hard, it's difficult for our brains to prioritize. And
Yeah.
so, like, a lot of the little things that should stay little become big. A lot of the big things that should be taken care of now aren't taken care of in the
they
moment,
get put back on the back burner.
and they get bigger. And so, yeah, that's the nature of it, though.
How did this all start? Can I ask you that?
How did creators groups
How
start?
did Creators Group start? And I know a little bit about this, but I would like for our listeners and our viewers to know kind of the inception of it.
Cool. Yeah, so backstory to Creators Group was I had a company that I started in college, and we were in the conference industry. We were traveling all over the place. Essentially, we were brokering deals between sponsors and the events. That's the easiest way to put it.
Yeah.
Towards the end of that, we started catching some attention out on the East Coast from bigger trade associations, and they were operating at a scale of like 100 times, like 100x what we were doing, but they were
dang.
interested in what we were doing
Yeah.
in our processes. And so we started the acquisition process. once that thing kind of, went through, I took a couple years to try and figure out what I really wanted to do. And it was because the first company was kind of this beautiful accident where we realized we were really good at what we were doing, but we also realized we didn't really like what we were doing. And so we would have these conversations about like, yo, if we're actually good at this, building a business or making money, then we should do it towards something that we actually like doing. It was not like, hey, I need to find my passion now and go do it and I feel entitled to it. No, it was like, yo, we've got these hardcore set of skills. Like, we need to stop doing this stuff that we're not cool with.
And just like shift over.
So that's what we ended up doing. So I started throwing my money at like all of my interests and tried to, I have a pattern. I noticed a pattern once I started these different tiny companies and investments and things like this, was that I like to do two things. I like to shake up old systems and piss old people off.
Nice.
And I will be that old person one day. You know what I mean? I know that. I see that. But they're old now, so I want to rock their world a bit and make it better. And then I also like taking things that are typically luxury products and making them more accessible to people. That's kind of the pattern. So I would throw money at, we started baseball tournaments. We brought this really cool system for high school players up from Texas, expanded it out west, up here into Missouri, out east. That was one of them. We did, I got into hip hop a little bit, trying to democratize music, all sorts of things. We had a mobile car detailing company. And this is kind of a lesson, I guess, for people who are wired like me is, I'm not passionate about cars. I'm not passionate about cleaning cars. It sucks, man. That process sucks.
Yes,
it's good money though. I mean, like, especially if you're coming up from nothing, you can go and have a simple set of cleaning tools and whatever. You don't have to be trained, like highly trained to do it, just to do simple cleans. The thing I loved about that company though, it was called Fresher Car. Best branding I ever did. But we would give preferential hiring to people who we defined as in transition. So people coming out of prison, people coming out of rehab, single mothers. We gave preferential hiring to all those people. And so we'd pay them to go clean these cars. They didn't have to book any of the appointments. All they had to do was be kind to the person, the client.
Yeah.
And then the requirement was that while they cleaned, they had to listen to a podcast to better themselves.
Ooh.
What?
It was the
That's
coolest
awesome.
company that I've ever run.
Did people like that? Like people that were working, doing it?
Yeah. I learned so much from that. Like if I wasn't doing creators group, I'd probably be trying to stand that one up.
Yeah.
And so we can talk about Fresh Car in a sec, but like all that to say, at about that time, this was like May of 2017. I had my money in 7 different places. Diversify. And I was, and my whole approach was like, yo, at that time I was like 23 or whatever. I was like, if I lose all of my money, I could literally fall asleep for the same amount of time I've been alive, 22, 23 years, wake up, and I'd still have 22, 23 more years to go and conquer everything. So I'm just going to give it a shot.
Yeah.
And I realized I probably needed a marketing company to handle all of my accounts. And at that time, Jack, the one who leaves the water bottles everywhere.
Random name.
Yeah. He DM'd me on Instagram and he was like, yo, I don't know exactly what you're doing, but it looks like you're doing some cool stuff. Can I vlog you like Gary Vee? And I was like,
Seems like a Jack thing to say.
yeah.
That's how you guys met?
So we went to high school together, but we never ran around in the same circles.
Okay.
So he hits me with this DM and I'm like, ooh, interesting. So that's not my style. I don't want to be in the front eye like that, but I see a trend.
Yeah.
So let's meet. And so we met that night and decided that we worked well together and that we were going to run out and start doing videos. And that's how that started. That was, like I said, May, June of 2017. And then pretty quickly we built the founding team. And we made a major pivot in June of 2018, so last year.
Yeah.
And once we did that, we pivoted from being our own production company where we get the clients, we do the work, we edit it,
Yeah.
to playing more of the business function role of finding the clients, taking care of them, then passing them to the creators who can create better than we could. And then we let them take credit for it. And since then it's been a lot better.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And that speaks to so many things about entrepreneurialism, about how the different iterations of kind of businesses that you've done, different ideas, diversifying, and just not being scared to take a chance and doing those types of things. I think people are always scared to take a risk. It's probably a huge factor of preventing people from doing that type of thing. But also, I think what you're talking to speaks on people not being sure about what it is they're passionate about. Do they want to go all in on something that maybe they're passionate about it at the moment, and like, is it going to be a lifelong thing? But it sounds to me like your answer is that don't put it all in one thing, maybe, but also be aware of the fact that that can change, and you'll be allowed to pivot to something more streamlined or more in line with what your philosophy is.
Yeah.
So that's pretty profound, I think.
Thanks, man.
I feel like you've been very fearless also just in that story and making the decision to like go after it. Like you got a message from somebody, you met up, you guys decided to do something, and here we are, you know, a couple years later, and you guys are, you guys are everywhere. You know what I'm saying? Like a creators group is really creating a amazing ecosystem here in Kansas City. And so I think that goes to show that, you know, for all our listeners and all our viewers, don't be scared. Just try it. You know, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, but don't be scared. You know, like Jay said, you could go to sleep for 22 years and then you can get up and have another 22 years left.
That's true.
So that's very, that's inspiring,
Thank
you know,
you.
to hear that. And to know that there's people like that here in Kansas City, and that we get to hang out with them on a regular basis.
Hey, look, and it's just the beginning. It's just the beginning. Does that mean 5 minutes?
Yeah, that means 5 minutes.
Okay, cool.
Sam's back there like,
I love it.
giving us
I'm
our
about
time.
it. I like all that. I've told you before, like, Sam, I like watching you work because you're very detail
He's
oriented.
the best, man.
Yeah, and
There's
like,
no one better.
and that's the shit that I'm not good at, right? Like, I see the big vision. I can go here. The best piece of feedback I ever got was actually in my first business, and the event organizer called me for our review on how we did, and he said, you know what, Jay, you are really good at A, and you're really good at Z. And I'm like, yo, thank you, man. That's cool. All right, okay. And then he's like, but B through Y, you're pretty bad at. Yeah, and at first I was like, because I like feedback, I like direct feedback like that, as uncomfortable as it is, but that's how I communicate. And so I was sitting there, I was like, we were on the phone because he's in Wichita, but his company's in San Diego. Anyways, and I was like, yo, ow, whoa, thank you, because he made me realize I had been trying to do A through Z. Not A and Z, right? Like I was trying to conquer B through Y, and I sucked at B through Y. And so I realized like if I find the people who are good at those other letters, then my career is going to be insane.
Can you give an example? Some examples?
Yeah. So the things that I'm really, really good at are seeing patterns and connections in the market. So trends, understanding these things at a very high level. And then being able to break it down into its very small pieces. So I can do that. I can sit and put an entire strategy for how to launch in a new city together in a Saturday, at least like our first approach to it, and then be able to break it down into like the 10 steps that we need to do. What I'm not so great at is executing on those 10 steps myself, getting in and actually doing it and thinking through the more practical side of things. That's where like a team member like Betty and Jean are very, very good at that. So they'll take my big thing. Betty will tell me if it's stupid because she's that blunt, and I'm so down with
Betty.
that.
Hey,
I love
Betty.
it. Shout out to Betty Badass.
Betty.
She is a badass. And then Jean is very good at just saying like, okay, cool. I see the architecture of what you did. I'm gonna take this little piece of your plan and I'm gonna completely reverse engineer it. And next thing you know, it's all laid out in a spreadsheet, and you're like, whoa.
You're like, thank you.
Yes. So those are the things I'm really good at. So I can do A and Z. I can open really well. I can close really well. It's the stuff in the middle, the hands-on work that I'm not so good at.
So, lesson is teamwork makes the dream work.
Teamwork makes the dream
Can
work.
you speak to how to receive criticism?
Oh yeah. Okay. So open to everything. Fight what's wrong. It's as simple as that. Like if you're wrong, and I heard you out and I asked you questions, like asking you to explain it and fight for it, but I still don't agree with you, then I'm going to fight back.
Yeah.
And I'm going to punch back. And I expect you to like receive it and do the same if you still think I'm wrong, right? It's like, to me, that's how you handle feedback. The truth is that we suck at most things, and we're wrong about most things,
Yeah.
and we're in our heads way too much. And so that's that's the beauty of having people who are willing to give you good criticism. The only criticism not to listen to, from my perspective, is criticism that's coming from a void in the other person's life. If they're like projecting their weaknesses on you, don't listen to it.
Okay.
But if they are coming from a good spot and they're like, I really want you to get better at this, then you listen to it, even if it's wrong. You know?
That also takes some self-awareness too. Like, you have to be very self-aware of what you have going on with yourself, and then in turn know that other people are coming at you from where their self-awareness is coming from. That's pretty profound that you mentioned that, because like, how has self-awareness helped you figure all of that out? Like, were you very self-aware, like from when you were like in high school or younger, or is that something that you've developed over the years?
Developing for sure. I've always been very observational, but like I still get called out by my team often, daily. Like this last week was just like constantly getting called out for saying like, hey, did you know that when you said this, it came off this way? No, I didn't. Thank you. So self-awareness to me is not like going and like for me, I can't get it from like sitting and meditating and thinking about that. That's not my vibe. I've got to hear it from the outside, because I operate just so tunnel vision on things, and I don't take things very like, I don't play into the emotions a lot. You know what I mean? So I need people who play into emotions a little bit more to tell me how I'm affecting these sorts of things. So it's definitely a developing process.
Nice. We're all about self-development here at the Realennials, so we like to ask that question.
That's a good one.
Yeah, for all of you out there, consider that. What is your observational standpoint? Where do you find yourself taking criticism? How do you process that? Are you able to see it for what it's worth? Are you able to read the motivations behind the people giving you criticism? All of those things, great things that you pointed out. So hopefully our listeners out there will take that to heart and process that in their future stuff. So we'll be right back after the break. Show. We're
Welcome
still here
back.
with Jay. I'm Pat.
I'm Ruby.
I'm still Jay.
And we're the Realennials. So what's up?
Okay, so what do you have going on in the future? Like, what we like to talk about the future in the last segment, just because it is something that we like to look forward to and just kind of see what you have going on. So what do you have planned for the future? Maybe this year, 5 years from now. What's up?
Yeah. So. Remember the AZ thing?
Yeah.
That's kind of how I look at my future too. That's how my brain approaches it. So I think about very near term, and then I think very long term, and I don't think about anything in the middle. So right now I'm completely focused on Creators Group.
Yeah.
Gave everything else up for the most part in like March of last year, because I knew that they needed a leader who was hyper-focused and was setting an example. So Creators Group, this year is going to be crazy if we can execute on it, and if the market doesn't recede. We are building this company to thrive during an economic downturn, but I still need 11 more months to build the machine. So we need to kind of fend off the downturn for like 11 more months, and then we're good. But this year we've got, we spent a lot of time in December trying to figure out our goals and our strategic approach to this. Run a real business that is something that you can scale and make a big impact wherever we go. So we want to facilitate 1,000 video transactions by the end of the year. We want to host 2 symposiums, one in might need to
Definitely
bleep that
attending
out.
that one.
Might need to bleep that out. And then we're building out a tech platform right now that'll make it really easy for you to connect with your video creators in whatever city you are in. I had a really tough time finding a video creator in Madrid, and I think Creators Group could solve something like that.
Oh, nice.
So we're working on that tech platform this year, and that's it really for Creators Group. Run a healthy culture. Now, like way big meta stuff, like down the road, I have some like very personal goals that I want to achieve. So like, I want to own 3 to 5 different, very simple locations, properties around the world.
Me too.
Yes, and in places that I think people should explore, and they should be in cool neighborhoods. And then the whole reason for that is actually not for me. It is for my future employees, their families, my family, my friends, who, especially when they start having kids, to be able to travel and
Have
go
somewhere to call home.
Yeah.
In those places.
And I want them to be able to stay for free. They cover the travel and everything, but they need to get out so that they're not racist and shit. So does that make sense? I mean, like,
Yes.
Absolutely.
so that's kind of one of the big meta things. I still got family over in the Philippines that needs help, so that's on my plate too. But yeah, it's really about finding security for my circle around me, and also allowing them to go adventure. That's kind of my big theme.
Man, that's awesome.
That is awesome. Adventure is important to us. What cities would you like to have? I already know which cities I want to have my
What are yours?
homes in. I asked you first.
Okay. So coming hot off of Madrid, there was one neighborhood in Madrid that was baller. And the people were cool. The art was amazing. The music was amazing. Food was dope. There's a 300-year-old tavern.
Wow.
It's older than our country.
Ooh.
And I drank at it. It was good. So I could see myself having a spot there. But then I think Philippines, of course.
Ooh, yeah.
That's probably the most selfish one, just so I can stay close to family and they can, maybe if they need to get out of the city or whatever. I was in South Korea, and I really enjoyed South Korea. I think it would be good for a traveler to go out to South Korea. And then somewhere in the Middle East, for sure. Yeah,
Nice.
somewhere in the Middle East. My favorite international city is Istanbul.
Really?
Yeah.
Never been.
I've always
On the
wanted to
list.
go there.
Gotta go. It is gorgeous. It is so cool. Oh, the culture is so cool.
So do you advocate for traveling, right, and adventure? Because everybody that's listening to this that is in the Northeast, that maybe hasn't traveled or hasn't gotten out of maybe just our country, like what would you encourage them to, besides get off the beaten path? What would you encourage them to consider to try to follow that adventure?
Yeah, it's almost like less about traveling in itself and more about like exploring other people's cultures and not being a dick about it, like laying back and just like observing and allowing yourself to understand what's going on. And you can do that locally, right? So like you said, like people aren't even getting out of their own city. They're not even getting out of their own neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And that goes for whether you grew up in a hood or in like suburbia.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I was with somebody from Overland Park, and for the listeners, if you're outside of KC, like Overland Park is in Kansas. They consider themselves Kansas City.
Yeah, it's a suburbs.
Suburbs,
Yeah,
but like they
suburb,
don't,
yeah.
they're like just now coming downtown, and into the
What?
crossroads and stuff.
Yeah.
Like they don't, this guy knew nothing about Parlor and was like, oh my gosh, how long is this,
Yeah.
like these sorts of
Offended.
things. So my suggestion to people, wherever they're growing up, but especially in places like the Northeast, start by going to other neighborhoods in Kansas City and not judging them.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things growing up was that like for whatever reason, my parents raised me really well. And I think it was because my older sister, wore them out so much that they just they gave up. They didn't tell me to do anything. And I had complete free, they trusted me. I would run out and do dumb stuff and come back and expect me to fix my own problems and all this stuff. And I was wired for that. I'm very autonomous anyways.
Yeah.
But the thing that my dad, who by the way, moved out of his house when he was 13, nobody's really self-made, but he's about as close as it gets. He would always take me from our neighborhood to other neighborhoods in Johnson County and OP and on State Line, all these really, really wealthy neighborhoods and white neighborhoods, and he'd say things like, "Yeah, you can operate here, you do it," like that sort of thing.
Wow.
Ooh, that's crucial.
Oh, it's humongous. It's
crucial.
humongous because my friends didn't get that. It's
I
not
didn't get
like,
that at all.
and the people who grew up there, like who I grew up with, are still there.
Yeah.
They're still, whether they're in Independence or Northeast. If they moved out to another Independence or Northeast.
Yeah.
The same bubble. You're in your own bubble. It's crazy. You got to be able to see these other neighborhoods and be able to function in them.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, there's always something to be said for people who don't want to leave and things like that. It's
Sure.
perfectly cool to just stay and live that life, and you shouldn't feel pressured or feel like FOMO or anything like that for not. But I think we're speaking to the people who are interested in exploring and they don't know how to go about that.
For sure.
And I think you're right. Just going to new neighborhoods, trying new food. I know lots of people who are in their late 20s and their 30s and older who have like never tried Indian food, for example. And that's tragic to me.
That is tragic because it's delicious.
Yes.
But that's a good place to start. Explore other neighborhoods and then just be open-minded. I think like what Jay's alluding to is traveling is not just about traveling. It's about opening yourself up to new experiences and putting yourself out there to experience life through the lens of other cultures.
Absolutely, especially when you think that you're right
Yeah.
about that culture, right? So like if you're
About
making
your own culture.
like if you're making an assumption about a culture,
Yeah.
most of our assumptions are stupid and wrong, and so you might as well go and explore it and just for your own benefit see if you're right. You know what I mean? Like, you know how many people like on the west side have these assumptions about the east side, and some of them are right, but then they've never been to the east side.
Yeah.
And it's like okay. And same on the east side. East side never been to the west side, and they make all these assumptions, and they have rich hate, which is something that we grew up with. Like, that was probably the worst thing that my dad did, was like, he still like thinks all rich people are evil. I'm like, but Pops, wait, what? Like, you're...
You have money.
Yeah, but he still has this thing, right? And so, but he's, as much as he travels and all this stuff, he'd never opened himself up to like understanding that side. So yeah, and I mean, this is like, why do we even have like gangs? Why do we have blocks and sets? It's like, one, probably because you didn't have a good family, but then also like, you're not willing to explore the other person's,
Yeah.
like, oh, geez, we got a lot in common, right? So yeah, I think it helps in business too. So if you're like a young hustler and you're trying to figure this stuff out, it serves you well to figure out how to walk into a boardroom. If you're black or if you're brown, walk into a boardroom of all white men. It helps you to know how to navigate
You
that.
need to know how to navigate that, people.
They call, I don't know if what you're alluding to is code switching. People who like grow up in areas like how we grew up, that would be maybe changing how you talk, how you interact with people. Say you're leaving your local taco shop from your neighborhood and you're going to that board meeting. How you're talking and acting in that taco shop is not how you'll be acting in that board meeting. And it's interesting that you bring that up because that's actually like a topic of contention, right, between people who believe they should not have to code switch in order to be successful.
That they should be themselves.
That you should be able to be successful and be yourself in this world. Whereas, and then there's the other side that says that's not the reality. You need to know how to code switch in order to be successful. And once you're in there, that's when you can establish the culture of where you're from. So I don't have an opinion of it either way, really. I understand that there is a reality of it. And as we spoke with Simone earlier about understanding the value of articulating to different groups of people, the important thing is being able to articulate your idea more than anything, regardless of who you're talking to. So if it's the idea that's the most important thing, then it does matter that you're able to communicate that to whomever you're talking to.
I think it's important too to feel comfortable in those situations. So a lot of times, my advice would be get comfortable being uncomfortable. You know, like it is going to be uncomfortable walking into a room of all, middle-aged white businessmen, and you are of a different ethnicity and age and gender. But that's the reality that we live in. You're going to have to be in those situations, whether you're traveling, whether it's in business, whether it's dating, like you're going to have to be uncomfortable. So I think the root of a lot of people maybe sticking to their patterns or staying close to where they grew up is because they're not open to being uncomfortable, or that uncomfortableness is so overwhelming, or they're just not willing to do it, that they kind of have to stick to what they know. And so I would just encourage everyone that's listening to this and in this room to continue, knowing that when you're uncomfortable, it's an opportunity for you to grow, and for you to have an opportunity to feel comfortable eventually in that type of situation. And that's how we grow, and that's how we get better.
Yeah, and I think like when you're trying to navigate these different scenarios, like the thing that will get you through it is not just your self-confidence, but your self-esteem. Mm-hmm. And your self-esteem is what you believe about yourself to be true, not what anybody else believes. Self-confidence is situational, mm-hmm. right? So like, I'm pretty confident that like if I go to the YMCA and I ball up next to some 8-year-old kids on the little tiny rims, I'm gonna whoop their butts in basketball. But if I step onto an NBA court, I don't have any confidence there. So that's situational. It's the same with a boardroom. You might, like if you grow up in the Northeast, you might be more comfortable sitting in a living room wearing wife beaters talking about this stuff than you would in a boardroom in Johnson County where everybody's suited up.
Yeah.
So self-confidence is situational, but if your self-esteem is there and you're like, okay, I believe that I can do this, I got this, like I know what I know about myself. If they judge me the other way, that's their judgment. But how do you build your self-esteem? It's by struggling and overcoming struggles. Yeah. So it is actually a privilege to struggle, to have the privilege to face really tough situations, because that gives you the opportunity to come out of those tough situations and face that. That's how you build your self-esteem.
Dang, that's where my self-esteem came from, all the struggling that I did. That was all self-struggle, though. I feel like I put myself through a lot of random things.
Don't be afraid to take those risks and make those leaps, right, towards your dreams, only because of your self-doubt or your lack of self-confidence. So, like, if you are afraid of all that stuff, maybe focus on the self-confidence thing first. I'm speaking from personal experience where I had to learn how to love myself, and I had to learn that I am worthy of all this thing. My potential for building all this stuff has always been there. It's been that self-confidence thing that was always like not there. And then when I learned how to do that and discover that and love myself is when everything else kind of started falling into place. So I advocate for, if you're afraid, consider why you're afraid. And if it's because of that, focus on that. And I promise you that everything else will start falling into place after that.
Yeah. When we think about like people who are growing up in tougher neighborhoods, like this is kind of a message to them. So if you look around you and you see people who have more than you, or you say like, oh man, they've got a leg up over here in this neighborhood, statistically speaking, yes. Like if you grow into money, you're more likely to get higher education, you're more likely to be successful in college, out of college, yada, yada, yada. Screw the statistics, it don't matter, right? If you grow up with very little, become resourceful. Like resourcefulness is something that people who grow up with everything, they don't have to be resourceful because they have all the resources anyways.
Yeah.
You become resourceful by having very few resources and learning how to get the most out of those. That is a humongously important skill set to have. And that's why I'm so big on like people coming out of these situations where they got nothing, is because they can be resourceful. So you put like privileged people in a tough situation, and then underprivileged people in a tough situation. You now are lucky, fortunate that you grew up with nothing, because you can do the baseline.
Yeah.
You've been there, right? Like these folks struggle in that time, and so that's why struggle is such a privilege.
It's not about your resources, it's about your resourcefulness, 100%. Because if you have, everyone can get resources, but if you have to be able to use what you have, you got to be able to play the cards you're dealt. And I think that is so important for everyone to just remember that. And I think we're all products here of having done that. We all were resourceful with what we had, and we got ourselves to a position where we could have a little bit more and be more resourceful, and we're still working on it. And I think that's a beautiful thing, especially here in Kansas City. You know, we've seen so much growth in our city and so many young creatives kind of flourishing and, you know, becoming names out here that it's really just inspiring to see everybody, you know, using their resources, but most of all being resourceful. Because a lot of times stuff's not handed to you. Stuff's not handed to us. It wasn't handed to us. So I'm actually proud of everybody in this room for being resourceful.
Well, thank you so much for coming out
course.
today, Jay. We really appreciate you being here and speaking with us and speaking to our audience. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We're the Realennials. I'm Pat.
I'm Ruby.
And check us out online. We're on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Shoot us an email at therealennials@gmail.com.
Yeah. And where can we find you, Jay? Everywhere?
No, I don't want people to find
You can't find
Do you really
Jay.
want me to say though?
No,
Yeah,
no,
on
no,
Instagram.
no,
On
okay.
Instagram. Yeah, JW Austin.
Okay, cool. So hit him up, follow him, check out what he's up to. If anything that he talked about is interesting to you, definitely follow up with him. And we'll be here next time.
All right. Thanks. Love you, fam. And now, enjoy our musical guest, Reptil.
Se escapa el alma, lo que era ya no fui, lo que creían dejé de ser. Mi alma entre luces se desaparece en un suspiro. ¿A dónde vamos? ¿Dónde dormir? Alma alma mía, regresa, da descanso a este cuerpo. Señor, devuelve mi alma desde la agonía y hazme sentir